Okay, present ko, Mary Alparan. Okay, thank you. Okay, okay na ang record?
Okay na.
Okay, so, hello, grade 11 Fidel. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Okay, this is Teacher Cherry Espana. Welcome to my class. You can call me Teacher Che. And how are you today?
Very good.
Okay, you're good. Okay, glad to hear that. So, are you ready tonight?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now let's break the ice. Okay, can you answer this? Okay, let's have our icebreaker. Next one, please. Okay, can you answer this? It's a feeling or the pleasure or satisfaction derived from one's own achievements. What is this? Character, pride, family, or dignity?
Letter B, ma'am. Right.
Pride.
Okay. Very good, Bakalso. Okay, next one, please. Okay, pride. So, number 2. Which of the following is a conjunction? Happy, fast, what, and?
Letter
Okay, next. The answer is and. Okay, thank you. And how about this? Is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. Okay, prejudice. Very good. Okay, and then the last one. A narrative either true or fictitious in prose or verse, designed to interest, amuse, or instruct the hearer or a reader. It could be a tale. What is this?
Non-fiction.
Story. Story. Very good. Okay, the answer is story. So guess what? Tonight, we are going to talk about the Pride and Prejudice story. Okay, are you excited today? Tonight?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. But before that, okay, next please, allow me to introduce to you my learning objectives this evening. At the end of the discussion, the student should be able to determine why the story called Pride and Prejudice. Second is to identify the literary techniques being used in the story. And finally, the last one, to create a theme of the story. Okay? Now, next one. Next slide. Okay, let's have a little bit background about the author of this novel. This is Jane Austen. Okay, she was born in Stevenston, Hampshire, England on December 16, 1775. Okay, she was the seventh child and second daughter of Cassandra and George Austen. And then, when she was in her 20s, she wrote a novel called First Impressions. This was basis for the book that eventually became Pride and Prejudice. Okay, and then her father submitted the First Impressions to the publisher, but it was rejected. So after that, Austen revised the title, and then she changed the manuscript. Then the English publisher Thomas Edgerton released the book in 3 volumes in 1813. So kay bali dugay kayo siya na-release, no? It took more than 16 years, I think. And then however, ang sad lang jud diri class is without identifying her as its author. So again, The Pride and Prejudice was Austen's most popular novel and her personal favorite. In fact, she called it my own darling child. She always remember my own darling child. And then, many Austen's novels received critical recognition during her lifetime. However, was only upon her death that her brother Henry revealed her authorship. So, sad lang kaayo jud sa iyang pagkamatay pa jud dira pa jud na na-reveal nga siya dayang author ato. Daliman ka, very popular kaayo nga novel. So, namatay siya no on July 1817 when she was 41. Okay? Now, next one please, next slide. Okay, in order for you to understand the story very well, let's meet the characters of the story. So, here is the Bennet family. So, this is Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Bennet, of course, the father of the Bennet family. A sarcastic, cynical sense of humor that he uses to purposely irritate his wife. And this is Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Bennett's wife, of course, a foolish, noisy woman whose only goal in life is to see her daughters married. Because of her low breeding of often unbecoming behavior, Mrs. Bennett often repels the very suitors whom she tries to attract her daughters. Next one. Okay, and this is Jane Beneath. Okay, kanang basta may colors yang nila. Something brown or basta kanang naka blondish hair. So that is Jane Beneath. So the eldest and most beautiful Beneath's sister. She is more reserved and gentler than Elizabeth. Okay, and then kanang naka green po, she is Elizabeth Bennet, the novel's protagonist, the second daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Elizabeth is the most intelligent and sensible of five Bennet sisters. She is well read and weak-witted, with a tongue of that occasionally proves too sharp for her own good. And then, next po. Next slide. Okay. So this is Mary Bennet, the middle Bennet sister, bookish and pedantic. And then Catherine Bennet, also known as Kitty. Okay, the fourth Bennet sister, like Lydia, she is girlishly enthralled with the soldiers. Okay, and then of course the youngest Bennet sister. Okay, this is Lydia Bennet. She is the most undisciplined, immature, self-involved of the Bennet daughters. Her main interests are flirtation and frivolous pursuits. Okay, so we can see here that in siblings jud na adyoy manadyoy maglahi, of course. Okay, so Lydia flings herself headlong into romance and ends up running off with Wickham. Okay, later mabala na to kinsa na si Wickham. Next one, please. Okay, now meet the Darcy family. This one, kanang makita ninyo there sa picture, this is Fitzwilliam Darcy, a wealthy gentleman, a master of Pemberley, and the nephew of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Though Darcy is intelligent and honest, okay, though Darcy is intelligent and honest, his excess of pride caused him to look down on his social inferiors. Over the course of the novel, he tempers his class consciousness and learns to admire and love Elizabeth for her strong character. So we can see here nga ipaila-ila pa lang nako ang mga character no, pero maka-glimpse na mo kung sino ang lovers dito. Okay, now next one please. Okay, here. This is Lady Catherine de Bourgh, kanang murag old dira sa picture. So she is rich, bossy noblewoman, Mr. Collins' patron, and there's his aunt. So later, mabalang isa na si Mr. Collins. And then, Lady Catherine epitomizes class snobbery, especially in her attempts to order the middle-class Elizabeth away from her well-bred nephew, Darcy. Okay, kontrabida kayo. Okay, and then, this is Georgiana Darcy, a 15 years old Darcy's sister. She is immensely pretty and just as shy. She has a great skill at playing the piano forte. Next one, please. Okay, and this is Bingley family. This is Charles Bingley, Darcy's considerably wealthy best friend. So, of course, mana siya ang best friend ni Darcy. Bingley's purchase of Netherfield, an estate near the Bennets, meaning silingan sila sa mga Bennets. Okay? He is a genial, well-intentioned gentleman whose easygoing nature contrasts with Darcy initially discourteous demeanor. So he is blissfully uncaring about class differences. So meaning, Charles Bingley is very kind. Okay? Wala siya nag-matter kung unsa imuhang class as individual or class ayong family. Now, next one please. Okay, this is Caroline and Mrs. Horse. Makita na ninyo there, no? So, this is Bingley's sisters who belittled Elizabeth family middle-class background. Okay, masawa lang ninyo na dira class. Okay, next one please. Okay, now these are the additional character. Yet, they have a big rule. So this is Charlotte Lucas, kanang girl dira. Okay, this is Elizabeth, dear best friend. She does not view love as the most vital component of marriage. She is more interested in having comfortable home. Thus, when Mr. Collins, kanang lalaki dira, proposes, she accepts. So here, this is Mr. Collins. Okay, he is a distant cousin of Mr. Bennet, papa ni sa mga Bennet, okay? A pompous, generally idiotic clergyman who stands to inherit Mr. Bennet's property. Later, mabala ninyo anong siya ang mag-inherit instead of the daughters of Bennet. Okay? Now, next one please. This is George Wickham, one of the antagonists aside sa mga Bingley sisters, sa aunt ni Darcy, okay? So he is a handsome, fortune hunting militia officer. From the word itself, fortune hunting. Okay, later mabala na to. And then Wickham's good looks and charm attracts Elizabeth initially. He is the enemy of Darcy. And finally, next one, next slide. Okay, this is Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner, Mrs. Bennet brother and his wife, meaning aunt and uncle of the Bennet sister. So the Gardiners, they are caring, nurturing, and full of common sense, prove to be the better parents to the Bennet daughters than Mr. Bennet and his wife. Okay? So, nakuha ba na ito ang mga character?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Now, next slide. Okay, the settings. Okay, so the story or event takes place in rural England at the Thorn in the 19th century. So this is the Longbourn, where the Bennet family lives or home. Okay, next one. Okay, now this is the Netherfield. Okay, this is Bingley's rented home. Actually, dili na siya na rented home, no? Kay i-purchase naman niya, i-palit naman. And then, next one. Okay, this is Pemberley, Darcy's home. Next one. Okay, Hansford. This is Charlotte and Collins' home. And finally, the last one, the Rosings Parks. This is where the Lady Catherine's lives. Okay, or home. That is her home. Okay, now, the story. Okay, although it is not detailed by detailed story, however, I believe all the plot structures here are all revealed so that you'll be able to answer your activity and assignment later. So you can read by your own, yet you can follow me so that you can understand the text. Is that okay, class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So meaning wala na ako gibutang kung ano ba siya, exposition ba sa racing action ba siya, wala. So you need to listen, okay? Now, the story all started in the Longbourn, the house of Bennets, okay? Mrs. Bennet announced to her daughters that wealthy Charles Bingley has moved to the Netherfield. Since Mr. Bingley is a single man, Mrs. Bennet asked her husband to call Mr. Bingley because she wants him to meet her daughters and hopefully marry one. Okay, without telling his family, Mr. Bennet visits Bingley. Next slide. Clear ba ta Daria? Pag yun magpaspas ra ha. Okay, and then, when Mr. Bennet back at home, he teases his family to be not excited to Mr. Bingley because all of his daughters can dance with Mr. Bingley. However, Mr. Bennet wants Mr. Bingley to give his consent for marrying any of his daughters, especially Elizabeth, whom she considered a very special bride, something like that. Okay, now, next. Okay, at the ball, Mr. Bingley and his two sisters and Darcy arrive. Okay, who arrive at the ball?
Mr. Bingley and his two sisters.
Okay, and Mr. Darcy. Okay, thank you so much. So here, the Bennet first meets Mr. Bingley at the ball, where he takes an immediately liking to the eldest daughter, Jane, and they dance for twice. Okay, and then Elizabeth overhears Bingley tells Darcy that Jane is the most beautiful girl he has ever seen. So when Bingley encourages Darcy to dance with Elizabeth, Darcy says, she isn't pretty enough for me. Not good? She isn't pretty enough for him, kumbaga. So, Elizabeth overhears and is annoyed. Okay, so how about you, class? When someone calls you pangit, how do you feel?
Mangat ka din.
Okay lang. Offended.
Offended. Okay, I see. So now, let's going back to the story. Now here, okay, next slide please. Okay, the people at the ball find Darcy as proud and disagreeable because his reserved nature and his refusal to dance. Okay, and then during the ball, Elizabeth points out how she or Jane, how Elizabeth and her sister Jane different from each other because
sa iya.
Jane is more accepting while she is less accepting and doesn't hesitate to express her opinions. Next one please. Okay. Now here, Jane and Bingley grow fond of one another. However, while Bingley makes his partiality quiet of use, Jane is universally cheerful and somewhat shy. So, of course, while Elizabeth and her best friend Charlotte chatting with each other, ana man jud na class nga pag wala kay ka-date sa prom or party, of course, sa imong best friend man jud ka padulong. Tama ba?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so here, Charlotte Locas point out that Darcy's pride may be the product of his status. And then Elizabeth agreed to her best friend. But still, she was hurt by Darcy's statement to her. Lang, isa di masakitan nato, no? So also, Charlotte advises to Elizabeth that Jane should make her feelings more obvious to Bingley. So you know, class, sometimes if you love the person, no, we should show to them how much we love them. Being showy is not a bad thing, okay? Okay, now at the same time, Darcy begins to admire Elizabeth, captivated by her fine eyes and lively wit. So Elizabeth, however, feels contempt for him. So you see, after the few minutes of the ball, Darcy begins to admire Elizabeth. But now, Darcy is nothing to Elizabeth. Okay, now next one please. Okay, when they get home, Mr. and Mrs. Bennet discuss Darcy's rudeness and solidified their first impression on him. So soon, Mr. Bingley invites Jane to his estate at Netherfield. Mrs. Bennet sends Jane a horseback rather than a carriage. So her theory motives is to ensure if the weather turns bad, Jane will have to stay long in the Netherfield. Kinijud si mother, no? So then, the Bennet receive a letter that Jane is ill due to the cold and cough. Then Elizabeth becomes worried and goes to the Netherfield to check Jane. So, class, we can see here that how Jane and Elizabeth close and care of each other. Next one, please. Paspas trabaho, class.
No.
Oh, here, Elizabeth walks the 3 miles to Netherfield to take care of Jane, of course. And then, arriving dirty and tired, Caroline, this is Bingley's sister, okay? Caroline later mocks Elizabeth's appearance, but Darcy is moved by the glow of exercise on Elizabeth's face. Char. So, class, hoping you find someone that even on your haggard face, he still finds you beautiful.
Sige.
And then, Jane's condition soon worsens and Elizabeth is invited to stay at Netherfield too. Next slide, please. Okay, now, Darcy is becoming concerned about his growing attraction to Elizabeth. He assumes she must be interested in him for his wealth. Still, Darcy is bewitched. He thinks that if it wasn't for her low connections, he might fall in love. So you see, feeling and ma-pride masyado ang person here. Next slide. So here, Jane's health does not improve. So Mrs. Benith and her younger daughters come to visit Jane. During their visit now, Elizabeth is embarrassed by her family's behavior. Lydia boldly asks Bingley when he intends to host a ball. And then Mr. Bingley is polite about this query and answer that once Jane is well. So here, Bingley affection for Jane grows. After Jane recovers, Jane returns home with Elizabeth. Next slide. Okay, now, soon after, Mr. Benith, distant cousin, Mr. Collins. So you can see in the picture, the man here, he pays to visit to the Benith home. Then Mr. Collins is in line to the inherit Longbourn because the state, kibalimor ang ilang government, being entailed away from any female children. Okay, walay karapatan ang mga female mga kababayan here. So, he soon asks Elizabeth to marry him, but Elizabeth refuses, and Mr. Collins ends up marrying her practical friend Charlotte instead. So you see, class, that Elizabeth doesn't love Mr. Collins, so she rejects him. But Charlotte does not believe that marriage must have love. So Charlotte emphasizes practicality over love. Okay? Gets po ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, meanwhile, militia officers have moved into the nearby town of Meryton. One officer, Mr. Wickham. Okay, as you can see here, walang ibang lalaki dyan na naka-red. So that is Mr. Wickham. Elizabeth is fascinated by Wickham's good looking. The two of them easily fall into conversation, and Wickham soon asks about Darcy. Elizabeth says that he is widely disliked for his bride. Then he tells Elizabeth he was the godson of Darcy's father, kibalinino God. So, who had promised Wickham a good inheritance. Next slide, please.
Inaanak.
And then, according to Wickham, Darcy failed to fulfill his father's dying wishes and left him without any penny. So, Wickham, hearing Mr. Collins go on about Lady Catherine, so kibalimorag si Wickham, na-inform siya ba nga na si Mr. Collins. So, moto siya, nag-share siya kang Elizabeth that Lady Catherine is actually Darcy's aunt. He adds that Lady Catherine apparently hopes to marry Darcy to her sick daughter. So, kibali, Lady Catherine has a sick daughter. So here, class, we can see that Mr. Wickham says something about Darcy's wickedness. Since Elizabeth doesn't like Darcy too because of their first bad encounter, so she believes. So class, I want to point out here that you should never easily believe someone saying without knowing the whole truth. Malamang, kwento niya yan, sumasama si Darcy dyan. Okay? So, and another thing, why do you think that Lady Catherine wants Darcy to marry her daughter? In fact, magpinta naman sila, di ba? So, of course, gusto ni Lady Catherine na ma-marry ni Darcy ang iyang daughter, of course, because of the wealth. Okay? He wants to be united with the wealth. Okay? Now, next slide, please. To secure their inheritance. Yes, correct. Correct po. Now, here. Wait. Saan ako?
Next day.
Wait lang. Wala ko yung makita. Okay, nara. Okay. Now, the next day, Bingley and his sisters visit Longbourn with an invitation to a ball at Netherfield. Diba, as what I've said earlier, na sabi ni Lydia nga, hey, Mr. Bingley, kanusa daw ka mag-held og ball. So, karon nahitabo na John. So, Lydia and Catherine, or Kitty for short, are overjoyed. Jane is excited to see Bingley, while Elizabeth looks forward to dance with Wickham. So Agoy, the two smells fishy, right? Pero spoiler alert lang ni class ha. Elizabeth was that fell in love with Wickham. She was just charmed by his good-looking man. Kaya sa dili like crush sa gwapo ana. Okay, now arriving at the ball at the wala pa. The Netherfield, Elizabeth is disappointed to realize that Wickham is not at the party. So Elizabeth blames Darcy of Wickham's absence. Next slide. Okay, Elizabeth endures two dreadful dances with Mr. Collins, which she must not do out of politeness. On the other hand, Bingley and Jane spend the whole evening together. Foolishly, Mrs. Bennet, Miss Mother, speaks loudly about their imminent engagement, and Darcy overhears her. Later that evening, Darcy asks Elizabeth to dance, and she reluctantly accepts. So finally, the destiny gives them a very little time to each other, at least, right? So next slide. Okay, now soon after, Jane received a letter from Caroline Bingley that she and her brother will leave the Netherfield to spend the whole winter in London. She adds that she thinks her brother may marry Darcy's sister, Georgiana. Naturally, of course, Isabel heard, Jane is upset by this news. Elizabeth attempts to comfort her and suspects a concerted effort is being made to keep Jane and Bingley apart. So here, Elizabeth is suspicious about her motives. She does not believe that Mr. Bingley isn't in love with Jane. Next slide. Okay, now Elizabeth travels to Hunsford to visit her friend Charlotte and Mr. Collins. The couple welcome Elizabeth. Mr. Collins points out the detail of his house and garden as if to show Elizabeth exactly what she missed out on. Char, kumbaga, ito na yung sinayang mo, kanagod. So here, but Elizabeth contented about her life. And she notices Charlotte is pretty contented and enjoys her life. The next slide. Okay. The next day, Lady Catherine Elle's daughter in a mixed appearance. Okay, Elizabeth feels main pleasure at the idea of Darcy being stuck by her. Okay, and then Charlotte lets them know that they are invited to dine at Lady Catherine de Bourgh's residence near at Rosings Park. So when they arrive, Lady Catherine is authoritative and snobby. She even freely criticized Elizabeth's upbringing and education. So here, class, makikita natin na that Elizabeth belittled by Lady Catherine, Darcy's aunt, okay, for her social class. So meaning, they always matter about the family class position. Rich is not for poor. So, rich is rich to rich and poor to poor. Okay? Clear po?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Next slide. Okay, meanwhile, here, Darcy visits Elizabeth and confesses that he wants to marry her despite her low family connection. So, shocked at his arrogance, Elizabeth refuses him. The kinsa manggod ba? Elizabeth or Lizzie rejects Darcy's first proposal because while he admits to loving her, he also says many insulting things about her family and social position. Okay, kinsa goy dili ma-hurt or kinang murag ma-trigger or basta something na gina-belittle ka tungod lang sa imong family position, right? Mahal lagi ka pero gina-insult man po ka sa imong family background. So, okay, then after that, she accuses him of both ruining Jane's future happiness and betraying Wickham, of course. So the next day, Darcy writes to Elizabeth. Next slide. Wait. Okay, now, the next day, Darcy writes to Elizabeth explaining that he objected to Bingley's marriage because of her family, low connection, and lack of particular preference for Bingley. So Darcy also tells that his father had promised to provide Wickham with a living as long as he entered the clergy. Pagkapari ba? Something like that. But here, Wickham both refused the clergy and squandered his newfound fortune. He also seduced Darcy's teenager sister. Darcy is intervened before they could elope and save Georgiana's honor. So again, finally, we know the truth here. Next slide. Next slide po. Next slide na. The next slide pa po, anak. Okay, soon afterwards. Okay. Soon afterwards, Elizabeth goes on vacation with Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. Ibalik pang akong gingon ka ganina, auntie and uncle. And agrees to stop Pemberley. So, where's Pemberley? Pemberley is Mr. Darcy's estate. Okay, because he's not present, so nisugot si Elizabeth nga mag-adto dito. But then, Darcy arrives unexpectedly as Elizabeth is leaving for home. However, Lydia, her younger sister, has run off with Wickham. Okay, when Lydia and Wickham ran away, Elizabeth and Darcy shared valued. They feel guilty by not revealing the true color of Wickham, the wickedness of Wickham. Next slide. Okay, to make the story short, makita nyo naman sa screen, you can read lang. So, it is because of Darcy paid off Wickham's debt. So, Wickham has agreed to marry Lydia. Before manggod class, if your daughter ran away with someone, so ang mga sister niya nga nabilin nga wala pa namin nyo, dili makapag-asawa tungod sa bad reputation. Okay, gets?
Gets po.
Okay, next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Lady Catherine pays an unexpected visit to the Beneath in order to speak privately with Elizabeth. She tells Elizabeth to stay away from Darcy. Okay, how about you, class? Ipatagan kag 10 million sa family sa imong gilaw para magbulag mo, dawaton nimo o dawaton nimo?
Dawaton.
Depende sa sabot, ma'am.
This is
No, ma'am.
Dawaton,
Kulang
ma'am.
manggod.
Higher pa
Okay. So, ano no? Pero, you know, class, sakit kayo sa bot, diba? Like something si Lady Catherine, i-confronted niya si Elizabeth nga, layuan mo si Darcy, something like that, na dili mo bagay, baba ka, murag, langit si Darcy, yuta ka, something like that, okay? Now, next slide. Okay, days after, Darcy and Mr. Bingley visits Longbourn. Bingley proposes to Jane and Elizabeth, and Darcy walk together. Bingley proposes to Jane, and then Elizabeth and Darcy walk together. She tells him how grateful she is for his role in rescuing Lydia for disgrace. Diba, ingon ko later nga, in fact, si Darcy man jud tong nagpasagot kang Wickham, mag-marry sila ni pakasal sila ni Lydia. So, nag-help jud si Darcy para lang sa dili mabad reputation ng ilang family, and para pod, of course, si Elizabeth wala pa man siya nakasal, so para makasal pod si Elizabeth. Okay? So here, Darcy replies that he did so only because of his feelings for her. Darcy tells Elizabeth that his affection for her has not changed. Sana all. Then, she then reveals that her feelings have changed, and she says yes to his second proposal. Okay, no? Second proposal. Okay, next slide. Maya na mo mag-talk. Okay, Darcy realized he was wrong to act so proudly. Elizabeth accepts that she was wrong too, to judge Darcy prematurely. So in the end, Mr. Beneath is delighted that his two daughters have married so happily. And Mrs. Beneath, of course, yeah, she was glad that her daughters have married so so prosperously as what she wishes for. Okay, and finally, their love is a happy ending. So, class, can you tell me why this story entitled Pride and Prejudice?
Me, ma'am. Billy,
Yes,
ma'am.
Lee, go ahead.
Okay. I think, ma'am, no, na ang title, gibuhat ni author is Pride and Prejudice. It describes the two main character in the novel since, as what I have learned from your discussion, ma'am, Darcy is a proud man. Yang okay siya, pero ang problema saya is yung pride. So, murag gina-judge niya ang social status sa mga tao. That's his problem. While Elizabeth, the girl in the novel, her problem is her prejudice towards Darcy. Was ginaingon gaya nila na first impression
Last.
sucks or last. So, first impression niya kay Darcy is siguro mayabang, bastos, since bastos mo dyan, since ang pride ato ni Darcy kung first meet nila, so lain dyan si Elizabeth. So I think that's why, ma'am, the author named the novel, ma'am, Pride and Prejudice, ma'am, to represent, ma'am, the behavior or the character of the two lead in the novel, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Billy. You're correct, no? So because of the character's attitude, Darcy is a pride man because of his pride about the social status of Elizabeth. And however, Elizabeth is prejudiced that he judged Darcy easily, maybe because of her first impressions without knowing him better. So, uh, so Mr. Bacalso, pwede po later ka na lang po mag-talk. Is that okay?
Dili daw okay.
Later na lang kay nag-ano po ko sa time. Okay. Natay chance tanan. Okay? Now, let's proceed to the literary techniques. Next slide. Okay, foreshadowing. So, the narrator begins The narrator begins with the statement, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in position of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. So here the reader have a glimpse that the story is all about the marriage, especially a man with a good fortune. Okay? Nagets ang foreshadowing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next slide. Okay, symbolism. So here there are three symbolism here, the Pemberley, the marriage, and then the outdoors. So let's start with the Pemberley. So Pemberley, again, this is Darcy's Estates, okay? Pemberley symbolized as the man who owns it. So Elizabeth visits Pemberley at the time where her feelings toward Darcy are beginning to warm. And then she is enchanted by its beauty and charm, and by the picturesque, the countryside, just as she will be charmed increasingly by the gifts of its honor. Kibalimag namang with something statue dito sa Pemberley. Then si Elizabeth, she was amazed by the beauty of the statue, and then moto siya. And then katong statue si Darcy man nagawa ato. Okay, now next is the marriage. So in Regency England, women could not hold property. And so after the passing of their father, for example, the Bennet family, the Bennet sister will have to rely on either their husband or their family or their male relatives. So, therefore, the marriage for them represents long-term stability. Okay? Now, the outdoors. So, the outdoor setting in Pride and Prejudice usually signifies authenticity and clear judgment. For example, when Elizabeth walks the The 3 miles to Netherfield, Darcy begins to notice her beauty. Seeing the outdoor grounds of Pemberley, of course, di ba, kung wala nig ato si Elizabeth sa Netherfield, dili man niya makita na nga how beautiful, how beautiful Elizabeth is. So, and then after that, seeing the outdoor Pemberley, katong ni ato si Elizabeth sa Pemberley sa balay ni Darcy, he understand who Darcy, who was the Darcy as a person. Dito niya na-understand nga, ay nga ni dahil nga pagkatao si Darcy. Okay? Of course, di ba, kay nag-visit man siya sa iyang best friend, nga, dito man sila nagkaila, dito sila nagkailag balik, dito sila nag-meet balik ni Darcy, and then dito na reveal nga ang mga secrets, ang mga truths. So, dito nakita ni Elizabeth kung usa yun si Darcy as a person. Okay? And then finally, the ending, that Mr. Darcy's second proposal takes place on a walk around Elizabeth's home. Okay, next slide. Okay, the imagery. Okay, Austen uses comparison in order to create imagery in the event. So the moods of the two tables are different. So I am referring this at the ball party. So at the ball, one table, kanang quiet siya, dull siya, while the other table are lively. So readers may feel as if they are in the scenes themselves. Reality, kumbaga. Now, the irony. So as you remember at the ball when Darcy claims that Elizabeth dili gwapa, isn't pretty enough for him, but then a woman who is not able to charm a man is suitable enough to marry. So very ironic kayo siya. Now, okay, it's time for you to speak, class. Next slide. Okay, for you, class, what could be the theme of this story? Bakaso, it's your time to shine.
Love versus social class.
Wala na siya nag-story. Okay, anyone? What could be the theme of this story? Ano yung bitaw mo?
Hello, ma'am. Matungog ko.
Yes, Bakaso, go ahead.
Putol-putol.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay, putol-putol. Sige. Okay lang, madung. Ay, dili ang putol-putol.
Okay,
Sige,
okay.
so, the theme. So, I think the theme of is love versus social class because as what Miss Billy said earlier, no, that it's a battle between pride and prejudice, no. So we can see. I think it is both the characters Darcy and Elizabeth possesses a characteristic of being proud and also being prejudiced by each other, diba? So although they love each other, but they have the pride na Darcy is proud because of his social status, and the other Elizabeth is also proud because she doesn't want to feel inferior because of their social status na dili siya gusto ginakawawa. But then I think there's a love between each other. They are just being prejudiced by each other. Na Darcy was prejudiced because of how he stands na, diba? For example, if you belong to a higher social class, so you will be prejudiced na hambog or kanang dili sana mapang mataas pa. So other pod si Elizabeth pod kay prejudice pod siya nga ginagamit na siya kunin niya, love lang kunin niya for my wealth, diba? So but then there is still a love, and then at the end of the story, I think it is I think it is good that they both realize that they love each other. That's it po.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Bacalso. You're correct, no? So, actually, class, so, love and social class. So, Austen suggests that true love, nilot kayo nga line, no? True love is a force separate from society and one that can conquer even the most difficult of circumstances. So, great true love yun siya, na despite sa mga criticism, despite sa imong mga social class, despite sa imong basta like katong tinawag kanina. So despite sa ana, true love will conquer all of that sa mga crisis nga mga paghitabo. Okay? Now, napa ba? So later na lang ha, napamantay activity. Next is repetition. One of the theme of the The story is Reputation. The story depicts the society in which a woman's reputation is the most utmost importance. So a woman is expected to behave in a certain ways. Of course, kabalo na jud ana, di ba? Permanente na lang ginabalik-balik nga ang mga lady, ang mga woman sa una dapat ani jud dapat ana. So this theme appears in the novel when Elizabeth walks to Netherfield and arrives with muddy skirts. Okay? To the shock of the reputation conscious of Bingley's sisters. Ana. So, kibali, ano, sa imuha lang appearance, di ba? Sa imuha lang appearance, makita nila nga bad reputation na dayon, ana. So, mo nang ano siya nga, one of the theme of this story is reputation. And also, the ill manner. Siyempre, magsakit lang day, bad reputation na, ana. So, and then, ridiculous behavior of Mrs. Beneath. Give her a bad reputation. Okay, give her a bad reputation kay nagpanghambog-hambog manggod siya ba? Ana. Wala pa ganina hitabo ang ilang engagement, ginaghambog na siya. Ana, maudato na sila kay ani kay iyahang daughter kay makaasawa nagdato, ana, something like that. Okay, now tukan ko. Next is the family. Family is an integral theme in the novel. For the female characters in a particular, no, the influence and behavior of their family members is a significant factor in their lives. Kibali, diba, sa to amang gani, the way how we act outside, kay makita nila, ay, nga niya siya sa sulod silang panimalay. Sana. So, for example, here, Mrs. Beneath was eager to get her daughters married. So, Mrs. Beneath, Mrs. Beneath, kanang na-influence niya ang mga anak ba, iyang mga daughters, okay? So the Beneath sisters constantly have to navigate their mother's plans and schemes. Kinasunod nila, ana. So while the male character, on the other hand, like Darcy and Mr. Bingley, have much more social and financial independence, they still rely on the judgment and opinions of female family members like Caroline Bingley and Lady Catherine. So meaning, individuals have judged according to the behavior of their family members. Okay, and then the last one is integrity. Elizabeth Beneath considered herself to have a very high standard of integrity. She believes in ways she considered consistent with her definition of integrity by refusing to marry both Mr. Collins, right? Katong na-remember ninyo, katong nag-propose si Mr. Collins, and then Mr. Darcy, katong, first proposal of Mr. Darcy. So, here, Gertrude Mia, diba? So, Elizabeth thinks it is very important to only marry a man she loves and respects despite the pressure to achieve economic security. Ana. So, kung dyan siya, ipanindigan dyan niya, na dyan siya integrity nga dapat sa marriage dyan, na dyan ang love. Ana. So, next is the gender. So, the story takes place at the time when gender rules were quite rigid. So, the men and women have a different set of opinions and influences. Just like the inheritance of Mr. Beneath, right? So, when he dies, his daughters will have to rely on their husband or their male family relatives. But then, wala dyan sila sila karapatan. So, si Mr. Collins dyan ang mag-inherit sa Long Porch. Okay, now, let's have our activity. Okay, anyone should answer this. Will answer this, I mean. So, why pride is bad? Although I know pride na po siya good, pero I choose this question. Why pride is bad? Anyone, please? Okay, Mara.
Good evening, ma'am. So, for me, ma'am, ang pride is bad because this pride po, ma'am, will interfere us with our character, and also, ma'am, pride can somehow like burang agbutahan, good ma'am, or blind individuals to their own flaws and even prevent them from acknowledging the worth and value of others. And sa character, ma'am, kay si Mr. Darcy, kay kanang iyang pagka-pride good, ma'am, kay nag nag-lead to misunderstanding and even naghinder og meaningful relationship. And sa story ma'am kay mura po na-appreciate na ko ba ang kanang na personally na mura ganun na-appreciate na ko or na-learn na ko ma'am nga dapat i-embrace ang humility, ang open-mindedness, and even the willingness ma'am to see the worth of others. So, what is mo?
Okay, thank you so much. You're correct, no? So as you can see, pride is bad because we will not be able to see how beauty the person is kay tungod nagahindan siya ba. Nagahindan siya nga makita nato nga ng ani dai siya tungod pud sa ato ang pride. Kanang ano na kayo ta, asa kay na sa tong sarili, something like that. Okay, anyone? Okay. At least answer na ang number 1. Okay, so next one please. Kani, I hope na mag-answer. So imagine you're in the upper class. So would you let a lower class man marry into your upper class family? Imagine ha, naka sa upper class and then masugot ba? Okay, Albaran?
Yes, ma'am. To be honest, ma'am, for me ha, sa ako, socio-economic status is less important for me, especially when it comes to love and companionship. And if you really love that person, well, it's my decision whom I will marry, and I will let my children also decide whom they will marry. So marrying a lower class man is okay for me as long as they respect and love my family. And syempre, sa puad yun, of course. Because what matters most when you are in marriage or couple is happiness. However, to some, it still depends to a family's decisions, especially their beliefs and values. Because to some families, socio-economic status is very important to them because it helps them to improve their quality of life. It might be just for business and then wealth, but ika nga, you can control the love that you're feeling, and you should not make your family use yourself just because of the wealth. So, hold on.
Okay, thank you Miss Albaran. So ana siya no. So also nakita po nako no nga based sa answer ni Albaran no kanang pwede man nga kanang one kamong duha ang madato, di ba? Mag teamwork tayo mo para madato mo ana. So kana ang love of course will conquer the all ang love. Okay, kita pa mag-answer. Okay po, Miss Divila.
Okay, short lang no. Ang ano lang is, yes, I would marry a man with different socioeconomic status than my family. Kay in a relationship, it's a partnership. Dili siya kung unsa ay kunyari usually ang girl man gyud ang girl ang maghulat ba sa man na mag-decide kod nga yani for example na ako na ko short lang pero sige na ako recent nagi-tan-aw lang na podcast silang ano daw ang iyahang hantod kanus daw siya maghulat nga iyahang uyab-uyab for the longest time kay pakaslan siya nga mag-propose sa iyaha tapos ito dito nga nag-ready daw ang lalaki mostly sa mga lalaki kay gusto daw sila settled na financially, mo gina-focus settled na financially, maka-afford na sa tanan-tanan before sila maging ready sa marriage. And that guy nga nag-ingon was told by his father nga inato pod iyahang mindset sa una nga gusto siya maging ready pod bago niya pakasan ang babae. Pero siya nga, when you have that kind of mindset, you will never be ready. Kay if if nagulat man ka sa kwarta, if nagulat lang ka nga magulat lang ka nga maka-afford na gyud ka, as in maka-afford na gyud ka, then always ra ka always ra ka, pride nimo, always ra ka sagpaon sa imong pride nga dili gyud na nimo siya maabot o dili gyud ka maging ready o mas maapektuhan pa hinuon ninyo maapektuhan pa noon ang relationship ninyong duha. So we as a couple or as people as the people who are in the relationship, kay you work together, it's a partnership, not a dealership.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Divila, of course. Ang isa sa karelasyon, partnership jud siya, okay? Very good kaayo, no? Next, okay, Miss Danwata, please.
Tabaan mo. Hello everyone. Sorry. One makan. Kung tagaan kong chance nga madato, yes, mag-imagine kong dato ko. Then, syempre, mag-menu good ko o lower class. Kaya nga, for example, kung puro mi dato, wala siya respeto sa kong ginikanan, even sa kung ginakulata ko niya, or wala siya respeto sa kung aso, everything is useless, right? Kung sa man iyang ka dato, kung may respeto, diba? So, ang ihang ko, ay, dato ko niya, kung siya, pwede pa na ko siya matabangan, mag-cooperate me to each other, diba, anak, mag-cooperate me. So, in that way, na-ay tendency na madato dito ka, diba? So, lang, ako masugot yun ko na class ako kumana. May partnership or makadara. So, I think,
Yes, okay. Congrats, Char. So, tama, no? Tama dyan siya. Na kahit pa, nindot po imang perspective. Of course, saan man nato na itong kwarta, oy, kung wala di patasan na ito ang manuan. So, something like that. So, of course, aside sa partnership, no, nakadyo dapat love sa isa't isa. Okay? So, buhon class, kung maminyo man mo, kung naman mo'y maminyuan, of course, piliin din ninyo tama. Piliin ninyo karapat dapat siya. Okay, at the end ba nga, di ka mabugbugan, kay mahal ang divorce, isa pa, murag ulo, kay ikapod siguro, okay, wala naman siguro mo answer, so, thank you class for your participation, nalingaw ko, no? And, naba mo'y na-learn today?
Naamam.
Okay, thank you so much. So, let's go back to ang objectives kung wala ba kayo na-miss. So, here, determine why the story called Pride and Prejudice, of course, na-check na the-answer ni Miss Cody. And then, identify the literary techniques being used in the story, of course. Tapos na. And then, create a theme of the story gitubag ni Mr. Bacalso. And since, nagsubag po ng upan sa atuang activity. So, next slide, please. Okay, so this is your assignment. Okay, nakikipang hatag naman ako tanan tong mga atong explanation ay sa story nga novel. So, your assignment is to answer this. Okay, plot diagram, exposition, conflict, resolution action, climax, calling action, resolution, and something like that. So, maoto siya, we're done. Thank you class for your participation. See you next meeting. Bye-bye!
Thank you, ma'am.
Hey, ma'am.
Thank you. Agad ka dalang wala man kasulod dyan si ma'am, no?